Hello, Yakri here with another Warframe video. This time I want to talk about the new changes to Khora and how they've improved her and how she probably still needs to improve. So first off, let's look at the build I'm using. So this is a power strength focused build, but with a moderate amount of other stats. The idea is to make some use of her whip ability while still getting good value out of her 2 and her 4, and to also have some power strength for Venari and her abilities. So Hunter Adrenaline in particular is very helpful for this because of the companions dealing bonus damage against enemies affected by slash procs. With the build I have on Venari, which I'll show you in a minute, and Venari's new slash damage type, she slash procs pretty much constantly, and that's actually how she ends up killing enemies at higher levels. So the Hunter's Adrenaline is helpful for that if you want her to get a few extra kills for you on the side. It's not super important because she still doesn't attack enough different enemies for this to make a big difference, but be that as it may, it's better than Rage anyway, if I recall correctly, so it's pretty handy. Yeah, so that's nice to have to keep your energy up. Now, let's see, I don't think there's anything else particularly interesting about this build. I do have Arcane Fury and Arcane Fury on here to get a little extra melee damage in. I believe that affects her whip, but I can't be sure, I'm not 100% sure. I think when they changed all those abilities, how they functioned previously, they should work with all like melee-like or weapon-like Warframe abilities now, but I can't be 100% sure that that's included. Let's look at her actual abilities. First, without stats. So the whip used to show the radius scaling with power range when she first came out. Now, I don't know if that is a bug, but that is gone now. So if that used to be a thing that happened, it doesn't anymore. It is basically the same as before. It's a fairly low damage ability, similar to Atlas's Punch, that does not get the combo like Atlas Punch does. So it's just going to be the fixed 25 energy all the time, and the base damage is okay. The radius is pretty good, so the AoE for it is actually pretty decent, so that's kind of the strength of the ability, I would say. And you can also hit enemies at a pretty decent range from yourself. And I think that pretty much covers that. It does benefit from melee combo multiplier now. That was the primary change to Whip Claw, as well as the added synergies between Whip Claw and Strangledome and Ensnare, which I'll mention in a bit. So that it does make it a little bit more effective. I'd say Whip Claw is kind of effective up to around level 100-ish enemies, but it still struggles a bit with heavily armored enemies around that level. Now, Ensnare is pretty good. It's your best CC ability. It's a little odd how it works now. So originally it would ensnare a target, and then other people would be pulled close to them. And when you kill the original target, everyone's freed from ensnare. Doesn't work exactly like that now. Now you can kill the original target and other enemies will stay ensnared. Although I've heard conflicting reports on this. In my experience, they stay ensnared, and I'll show you that in a bit. And supposedly you can hit the ensnared enemy to cause it to propagate outwards. Now, I have not seen that be a thing that happens, so I'm not sure if it's working as intended or if hitting the targeted enemy with your Whip Claw does something else. I don't know. But there's supposed to be a synergy going on there. I haven't seen it happen. It's a pretty decent ability. It's not really... It's kind of like a less good version of Nidus's 2 for the most part. Except that you can cast it on multiple enemies. So there is some advantage to casting on 1, 2, 3 guys in different areas and having all the enemies grouped up in each of those places. Then you go and you whip each of those groups of enemies, killing them all. Right, with your 5-meter radius AoE on the whip. So, Venari's been changed pretty considerably. She now is a passive ability, replacing your old passive that gave you 30% armor, basically. So that's gone. You just lost 30% armor, which makes her squishier. But, of course, it's not a big loss because it was kind of a boring passive anyway. They probably should just bake that into her base armor. So, Venari now is still not super good, but she's better than she was before. Her snare and health regen and speed multiplier actually, I think the speed multiplier scales with range, not power strength. But the health and snare damage scale with power strength, as we can see here, which they didn't previously. And if she dies, she respawns automatically after 45 seconds, or you can spend energy to respawn her earlier. It costs 50 baseline and scales down the longer she's been dead. So if she's going to respawn in 1 second and you respawn her early, it's not going to cost you 50 energy. It'll probably cost you 1 energy. So that pretty much covers Venari. My big note here is her defense mode, as far as I am aware, is still useless. Attack is good. If you want her to attack things, it I think activates the ability for her to use the ensnare. And then the defense mode is actually quite useful if you want her to heal you. The health per second is at 87 with my current build, which is quite good, and means that combined with companion mods and with, what's it called, Hunter's Adrenaline, you're going to have a very easy time keeping it high HP and at high energy at all times. Now, her ultimate Strangledome, what can I say about this? They changed it so that with Whip Claw, you can target an enemy in the at one of the points and deal damage to them, and half of the damage will be spread out to the other enemies in the Strangledome. Now, this does not work very well in practice. I don't know if it's a bug or if the ability is just intended to be quite weak. But on higher level enemies where you really need this to work, you'll be doing like, 5,000 to hit to the primary enemy with Whip Claw, and then the secondary enemies will be taking like 100 extra damage instead of like, 2,500 extra damage. Now, I'm not sure if this is because it's bugged, or it could be because what they intended was that the damage would be split, half the damage will be split up and taken by every other enemy in the Strangledome, in which case it's just a bad buff. It doesn't make it a whole lot better. I've said a lot of negative things about Strangledome before, mostly about how it separates out enemies so that you can't like kill them as efficiently. That's all still true. It is hilarious and fun though. It's kind of like a goofy, fun ability. So I don't 100% hate it. It's just weak. That's a good way to describe it. Just to describe it, it's weak, and it's not very good if your goal is anything but lock down all the enemies. Don't worry about killing them, right? Now, so here are all the abilities with the stats I'm currently at. So I've got a little bit of efficiency, a bit of power strength, and of course it will be better if I status proc an enemy. All right, so let's look at Venari really quick here and talk about some of the kind of cool things about Venari. Some of this is just stuff you can do on any Kavat, of course, but the nice thing is you have her for free, so you can have all this nifty stuff as like an additional bonus while still keeping a Sentinel for vacuum and Sentinel abilities. So in that context, I feel it's quite good. I'm not totally sure if I want, like, maybe you'd want Shelter or Pounce on here instead of one of these abilities, but there's some nice things you can do. So Hunter Recovery, of course, gives you life, steals, or causes your companion to life steal life to you. I don't know how to put that into a sentence in a really good way. When your companion deals damage, you will heal. And then, of course, Pack Leaders, when you deal damage with melee, your companion will heal. This is a pretty nice synergy where you and your companion heal each other, and I don't know what else to say about that. I think it's pretty nice. Let's see, combine this with you throw Sharpened Claws on here, you throw Swipe on here, so you can hit multiple targets sometimes. I've got Maul at 300%, so Venari does an okay amount of damage. When she's actually using her special attack, she does kill level 100 enemies fairly effectively with slash procs. See, the actual damage doesn't really do a lot, but then the slash procs get them. I don't know, it's really hard to tell exactly how it's working. Her base damage may be getting multiplied by power strength, or it could simply be that her snare damage, which is multiplied by power strength, is getting multiplied by maul, and then also turned into a slash proc. So that's, it's kind of nice. But she still doesn't do that much. But this build it's nice to have. The healing parts of it are probably the most useful. Okay, so let's look at my Galatine Prime build. I tried a Condition Overload build, and it did not do a whole lot of damage. Now, I don't know if I was just having bad luck or I fucked up the build somehow, which would be this build here, right? Blast / Impact Puncture, Yeah, and then of course Venari is slash procking everything all the time. So with condition overload, your whip doesn't really do any damage in my experience in the testing I did. But with Blood Rush, it seems to scale properly and do pretty good critical damage. So I think a Blood Rush crit damage build using the Gladiator mods to get that increased crit chance from combo multiplier is probably the way to go. Like Asterisk, probably. I'm not totally 110% sure, but it seems to work a lot better than condition overload. If you really wanted to optimize for it, you could remove attack speed mods like Berserker, because that does not affect your whip, of course, and throw on more elemental damage instead. Additionally, Venka Prime would be the ideal weapon to use because, of course, her whip scales with combo multiplier, and you need. I find it's a little bit lackluster until you hit like 2.5 combo multiplier, and then it gets to be pretty good against higher level enemies. So let's see, what do we want to test out? Let's take a look at how much damage she does versus heavy gunners, and how much Venari does as well. So I'm gonna make myself invincible because she's not really durable enough to handle these kind of enemies. You can still do okay in practice against level 100s in real missions. I say only okay, not great, but if you ultimate, you know, like drop 2 ultimates and use your CC and hide, you can still stay alive because, of course, you have pretty good CC. Now, let's see how much damage the whip does here. 580, that's not super good. Let's build up some combo multiplier, shall we? Let me actually pull this out all the way. It's invisible. Cool. All right, 1.5, 2, that's a little bit better. Okay. So that's too much we're getting. Look, 9,000 critical. It's getting 6,100. Much better. Yeah, crit damage is actually pretty decent. The AoE is, like I said before, kind of the strong point of this build. And of course, these are enemies with a lot of armor on them. If they didn't have armor, if you're running corrosive projection in a team, it would be a lot better for you, right? And one thing that's unfortunate is you can't there we go, growing power. So it's growing power on here, and boom. I get into the high amount. Yeah, still pretty similar amounts of damage, kind of varying based on critical. Now let's stop attacking him for a minute and let's see if we can track down. Venari died. Let's revive Venari and see how she does against these guys. So this one's obviously got low health, but you can see it already. But you can see its health ticking down pretty quickly there, and that's pretty much par for the course. She doesn't really attack a whole lot of enemies. It's kind of one at a time with this ensnare. And it seems to build up a ton of slash procs though, and their health just drains away. And if she actually strips their armor off, then her regular attacks do a little bit more damage. But that kind of doesn't always happen, you know, it's a little bit up to the pet AI. So yeah, Venari is actually like okay effectiveness against these enemies, but of course she does die pretty quickly. There's not really too much you can do about that. Unfortunately, you don't have like fantastic base armor or health. It's just kind of okay. So Link health and Link armor aren't as strong as they could be with Khora. So that's just a little bit lackluster. Now let's take a look at her ultimate and ensnare instead. Oh, I should really get some more energy for this. Whoops. Excuse me. All right, so let's drop an ensnare. The propagation delay still kind of hurts, but the ability is pretty decent. You can drop it on a couple of enemies and CC a fairly large area quickly. It's not super strong, and of course the oh, woke up already. That's kind of buggy, is it? What's going on with that? I wonder if you like control too many enemies, that if they wake up or if there's some other thing going on, because I shouldn't have ended that early. Let's see if I do just one here, because I did some tests earlier and it did last the full duration, or like 90% of the duration when I was testing it out before. That's a little bit odd, isn't it? Oh, okay, I guess I was, no, 8 seconds, huh. So the full duration never happened, so I think it's bugged. I think it's bugged. It was working on just 2 enemies by themselves earlier. I didn't notice that it ended early on groups of enemies. So something's fucky is going on with multi-targeting on this. Maybe you need to hit them with the whip, I don't know, because the whip ability doesn't seem to quite work correctly. But as you can see, it works fairly nicely to bundle up enemies for increased damage. I'm not sure. No, I think the secondary targets do take increased damage from your whip as well. So it's kind of a nice combo you have here where you can start beating the shit out of these guys, and it actually starts to become fairly effective damage against these level 100 enemies. Of course, you know, I'm not taking any damage, so I'm not benefiting from Hunter Adrenaline, so I do run out of energy pretty quickly. If you don't want to use Hunter Adrenaline, you probably need a more durable, or a more energy efficient build. So, let's spawn a bunch of these guys and check out the ultimate. And I'll show you what I was talking about with the whip not being super effective in her ultimate, okay? So, actually, I need to build up a little bit of combo multiplier. Come on down here, guys. There we go, 2.0. Or 2, that's pretty good. Okay, so if we whip a guy over here, right, he's taking okay-ish damage. That's a little glitchy there. Actually, it's not even that much damage. Frankly, I think Ensnare is probably better. This guy's still pretty much full health, though. Let's try over here. If I kill 2 of these guys by whipping them to death, which is not working very well at all. Oh, jeez. How much health is that guy at? Like 90%. He should be at half or lower. He should at least be, like, whipped 1 guy to death, this guy down to half. Yeah, he should be around half health. At least have taken a significant amount of his health in damage, right? And who is the guy as this guy? This guy's taking like a little bit more. The propagation just does not seem to be great. I would like to see everyone in that ultimate dying, really. I mean, the whip doesn't do enough damage to just obliterate people in your ultimate to begin with, and I'm not sure the double damage enemies are supposed to take in your ultimate is working correctly with her whip even. Like, let's take a look. Let's give this a little bit of a shot here, right? So we're hitting like 500s. All right, let's just, without building up any more combo multiplier, let's see if we can get 1,000 here. Come on. Okay, 1100. It does work on the primary target. That's nice, at least. And I think we can see, let's see if I can, in the corner of the camera, you should see there's like 135 came up on that guy on the left. You should be seeing the extra damage. Yeah, 135, right? I think I hit for a couple thousand and 135 transferred over. That is not half. And so that's the problem you have with the ultimate. And of course, all the enemies get lifted up into the air. Let's check this out again, right? So the enemies get lifted up into the air and swing around, and they're hard to shoot, and you know, it's just kind of a mess. It's just kind of a mess. Let's give this another go here, right? This is what I'm talking about. Enemies are all over the place. Even with Ensnare being kind of slow and a little bit weak if you don't build for maximum range, I think it's a lot better than your ultimate, probably. So let's go back and look at her abilities again here, because there's something I want to point out. I think it says the grab radius is affected, actually. Okay, never mind. I was going to say the grab radius isn't affected now. Someone said that on Reddit. I guess they were just wrong. I hadn't gotten in to test it yet. But let's see if we can simulate these guys, and let's see if we can get the grab radius to happen. Okay, so when are they going to get grabbed? Yeah, that looks about right. Does that look right to you? Looks right to me. Those guys are taking damage all the way over there, and my abilities are 14.5. So the grab radius should be longer for your ultimate, I think. Could be because the points are above the air or up in the air, or because the explosion radius is a little bit higher. That might be why. So yeah, I think it is working as intended, despite reports that it isn't. All right, so. I think I've covered all the abilities. Let me like summarize this whole thing. Well, first I want to talk about some nonsense I'm seeing posted online. So a couple of notes. One is that if you kill the primary target of Ensnare, it expires still. That's not true. If you kill the primary target, the other targets stay ensnared. Another was that Strangledome's grab radius does not increase with range. Well, that's apparently not true. Visually not true in here, and it seems to about work out correctly in game. Not quite, but it's probably just angles because it grabs from the little points, right, on your dome. Was anything else bogus? Oh, Whipclaw used to have a radius that visually in this ability viewer increase, but it doesn't now. I think, yeah, but it doesn't anymore. It's just fixed at 5, which kind of makes sense because you could make it like just a stupidly huge AoE, it'd probably be broken. I think that was probably what was intended all along. Okay, so actual review of Khora. She's kind of weak. That's kind of like the takeaway. I think these changes were, let me think, all good. Yeah, pretty much all good. Ensnare seems to work better now, except for whatever weirdness is going on with its duration. There's something wrong there for sure. But other than that, seems to work better now. It's a little bit more kind of what you would expect. Whip Claw, it just really didn't do enough damage with the combo multiplier. Still probably doesn't do enough damage. Venari, she's still crap, but she's like a less disgusting kind of crap than she was before. Making her passive the way they did it, at least in the end, was a good move. Makes her much more fun to play with. Giving you the ability to command her to like come and do something, that works a lot better. Just making her scale a little bit more is definitely a step in the right direction. There's still some issues though, like her defensive mode doesn't really do anything, and she's not very aggressive, doesn't get a lot of doesn't like actually attack a lot of enemies. Like the net result is that you have this kind of ability that's going around and once in a while killing one guy, right? It's not very useful outside of your the heal ability, which is a little inconsistent because the AI will sometimes just like not come over and heal you when you tell it to. But it's massively improved. The changes were all good. It's just that it needs more changes to be a good ability. Strangle Dome is still really counter to I don't know what you want to do in Warframe. Maybe make it a little bit more deadly. Perhaps, for example, instead of having this like synergy with Whip Claw that apparently is not really working, have damage dealt to one enemy transfer to other enemies from any source. Just, you know, fuck it. You can shoot it with your guns, you can hit it with your whip. But, you know, if you don't want to do that, if the D doesn't want to do that, at least let Whip Claw send half the damage to other enemies and have them take half the damage. Make it finisher damage or something if you have to. It needs to actually be half the damage, not like, I don't even know what that was, like 1% of the damage? 5%? Something, 1 to 5% of the damage? A ridiculously low amount is what is actually happening right now. And it needs to be higher or there's no point, really. And that would at least make it a better solo ability, or a better ability when you're just carrying everyone and you can slaughter everything in your Strangle Dome with 1 or 2 attacks, no problem, right? But as is, it's mostly there to frustrate your allies, I think. So yeah, Khora has a lot of problems. She's a fairly weak Warframe. She's maybe better than Hydroid now, so that's an improvement. But compare her to, say, Atlas, who has like that similar kind of like pseudo melee first ability. His punch is fantastic compared to Whip Claw. His punch is just generally very good. Whip Claw is fairly weak. However, despite the fact that it does have this nice AoE and this nice range, so it's got like this utility and less damage, but the damage is low enough that you can't handle tough high-level enemies. So this isn't going to bother you much in a lot of star map content. However, she just does not scale very well, and her CC isn't good enough for her to be like a really decent CC choice, right? Valbon is better, for example. Nidus is better, for another example, at doing similar things. And so she needs some sort of special sauce to make her a little more viable and useful. There are a few places where that could come in. One might be give the Whip Claw some kind of combo like Atlas's fists get. If nothing else, even if it's not doesn't put it on par with them in damage, if it's more efficient and you can spam it more effectively, that would be a massive improvement to the ability. And then another area where this would really help out would be in Strangle Dome. If the damage propagation from Whip Claw worked much better and actually propagated half to all of the damage from each attack, that might actually be fairly good. Or if it actually propagates the damage from any attack from allies and then pulls in more enemies. So it becomes this thing where you kind of like shoot the Strangle Dome pinata, and shooting one enemy pretty much kills all the rest of them, and then it sucks in more guys and you just blast them. I don't know if they would actually want that to be a playstyle that exists, but it would be one way to spice her up. Venari is another ability that could really use a boost and would be one place where you could add a lot more value for Khora. The protectability doesn't really do anything right now, but it could be a target for a rework so that it has some sort of powerful defensive buff component so that she can actually survive in higher tier content, so that, you know, later on her abilities fall off a little bit, but she's still got that CC and she can be a bit of a gun frame. Also the AI tweaks. I don't know if maybe there's general pet AI tweaks coming. That would be a big help for her. And perhaps I don't know, some sort of better ability for Venari to kill enemies. Probably the only really way that can help is she does fine damage actually, but she doesn't target very many enemies at a time. Perhaps if Snare was reworked to be a bit of an AoE attack, or even something kind of like Ensnare, right? Right now one enemy gets like webbed and it just deals a ton of slash procs to that guy. What if instead a bunch of enemies are kind of sucked in, sort of like the Telos Bolt Ace, and slash procs are dealt to all of them? That alone would make Venari quite powerful. Yeah, and that would be a much better situation for you to be in. Yeah, I think so. So she needs something more going on because she's kind of weak right now. And then of course, I think that the defensive ability on Venari should be fixed on general principle because it doesn't do anything useful. And you shouldn't have just a dead part of your kit. Certainly, a lot of Warframes like that exist, but it's a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. And I think we really need to like kind of wipe those out. Like Nidus is a great example. Does Nidus have any part of his kit that's dead? No, none of it. It's all good, 100%. So yeah, that's the kind of situation that I think all new Warframes really should be in. I hope. I would hope for that. And then whatever the fuck is going on with Ensnare, right? I don't know what the fucking weird shit is happening with it, but fix it, Like, it doesn't seem to have any kind of propagation or benefit from hitting it with Whip Claw like it's supposed to, and it ends early randomly. So make those things work, and it'll be good. So yeah, that was my overview of Khora. This was a bit, I know I do pretty long-winded videos anyway. This is a bit more long-winded than a lot of others. Partly that's because I don't really like the position she's in right now. I think she's kind of bad. And so it's a lot of criticism and suggestions that I wouldn't normally include in one of these videos. So thank you for bearing with me to the end if you got here. Yeah, I think that covers pretty much everything. Thank you for watching. If you like this content and you want to see more of it, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Yakri out.